Hi everybody, Michelle Lyons with you here. And today in this video, I want to talk about headaches, migraines and menopause and premenstrual headaches, why they happen, and of course, what are we going to do about them? So the idea for this conversation came up a couple of weeks ago when I was getting my Halloween decorations out. Halloween is a very big deal in our house for a number of different reasons, primarily because it means I can use my anatomy models as decorations, but also it is my daughter's birthday. And I got these candlesticks last year, really because they spoke to me, because this is how I feel when I get a really bad migraine. I feel like there's a steel claw just coming and wrapping around my head, my eyes, my jaws, my throat. Can't see properly, can't speak properly. And for a lot of women, they do struggle tremendously, and it is a condition that affects a disproportionate amount of women. So I thought it would be a good idea to have a chat about what migraines are, why they're affected so much by hormonal fluctuation. So hello premenstrual headaches and hello perimenopausal headaches and migraines. And of course, like I said, what are we going to do about them? So a couple of different things to consider with migraines particularly. Forgive me, I have some notes here so I can keep on track here. They are the number 3 cause of disability globally. So behind depression and back pain, we have migraines, and they affect 1 in 4 women worldwide. So a huge amount of people suffering with migraines, 1 in 7 altogether, but 1 in 4 women. Before puberty, they affect mostly boys, but after puberty, they really start affecting girls and women primarily, with a peak between the ages of 25 and 55. It would be quite rare to have somebody with migraines in their 60s. It can happen, particularly if it's cervicogenic, headaches driven by neck problems. But oftentimes it's blood sugar and estrogen that we're looking at controlling here. So the other reason that I wanted to do this video was primarily it was going to be a video for the students on our 3rd age menopause certification course. Because in that course, we do talk a lot about how hormones, particularly our friend estrogen, affects everything, musculoskeletal health, mental health. And we do talk a little bit in the course about differentiating between cervicogenic headaches, so that's headaches that are, really driven by neck dysfunction, okay? We talk a little bit about TMJ, your temporal mandibular joint. So if you put your finger in front of your ear and you open and close your jaw, that's your TMJ. So again, that's another syndrome that primarily affects women. And of course, then what's happening inside in the brain. And I'm not going to rehash what we talked about in the course because that's there for you to study, but it occurred to me that this might be beneficial for a wider audience. So the cervicogenic and tension strategies are kind of in that course. I want to talk about the hormonal drivers of migraine here today. So migraine is a primary headache. Secondary headaches are ones that are driven by other factors. So for example, if you've got a brain tumor or meningitis, that's going to cause a headache as well. It's a neurological event that's happening in your brain. And we're really not sure what drives it. We know some of the things that can trigger it, but we haven't really got a good handle on how to eliminate them yet. There aren't really a huge amount of effective pharmaceutical options, I should say. What happens is that basically you can get some fluctuation in vascularity, opening and closing of the blood vessels in the brain. But what's actually happening is the brain itself is becoming flooded and irritated by these chemicals, some of which include prostaglandins. And prostaglandins are the chemicals which are often drivers of dysmenorrhea, of period cramps. They can have an effect in your brain as well. And in fact, women who have bad menstrual cramps are also going to probably be on the radar for premenstrual migraines as well. And these inflammatory chemicals that are produced in the brain, they affect different parts of the brain. So for example, if the occipital part of your brain is being affected, so the occipital part would be the part here at the base of the back of the skull, this part of your brain is responsible for vision. So they think that because the occipital region of the brain is affected, that's why some people get an aura or get visual disturbances. If the vagus nerve is affected by this chemical irritation, you might get some gastric symptoms with your migraine as well, nausea, vomiting, things like that. So the questions to consider with migraines are, how often are they happening and when are they happening? So as with anything else, tracking is really, really good. And I've talked about this before, particularly when it comes to menstrual issues, but writing down what's happening to you, when, potential triggers, what worked, what didn't work, and looking at that over a 3-month period might give you a good insight into what's driving your headaches and what we can do to calm them down. There is a genetic link, but ultimately, what a lot of migraines come down to is that your brain does not like change. It likes steady, consistent, day-to-day stability. So it doesn't like big changes in blood sugar, in sleep, and it definitely doesn't like big changes in hormones, particularly, again, the estrogen vary. So estrogen is brilliant when she's in balance. When estrogen is balanced, she protects our hearts, our brains, our bones, digestive health, muscles and tendons, pelvic health, libido, so many good things. However, when she's a little bit out of balance, when she is roller coastering through our premenstrual days or perimenopause, then she can turn into a little bit of a dragon. And we have to figure out how to tame our dragon and calm her down and manage her and give her what she needs so she doesn't get angry with us. So we'll talk a little bit more about the hormonal factor with migraines in a sec. So blood sugar fluctuations are a big thing with migraines. If you're not eating regularly, your blood sugar can dip and then you feel tired or sluggish, so you might want something with caffeine or sugar. So your blood sugar goes up really fast and then insulin has to be produced and then the blood sugar drops again. And you can have a little bit of this going on. Your brain doesn't like that. Your brain prioritizes its survival above anything else. So it's going to take 20% of all your energy straight off the top. It demands 20% of your fuel. Now, it loves glucose, but it's not necessarily always best in the form of refined carbohydrates. More on that anon. So keeping a nice steady blood sugar, eating regular meals at regular times, paced throughout the day. So, you know, every 3 hours or so might be a nice way to think about, you know, how have I fueled my brain? Am I keeping my brain happy or am I heading down a roller coaster? Some people do have food triggers for migraines, and the ones that are usually talked about are chocolate, citrus, and cheese. But there's no universality to those triggers. Everybody's quite individual, and sometimes they can change over your lifetime as well. So the best way to find out if something is a food trigger for you is, again, track and see what's happening. It probably would take 12 to 24 hours for a food irritant to manifest as a migraine for you. So you want to try and track what you ate the day before a migraine as well, if you are measuring these things. Hydration is vital for your brain. Your brain is about 80% water as well. There is some research showing that drinking a glass of water before you go into an exam, like in the hour before you go in for an exam, can actually improve your concentration by about 12%. So your brain needs steady fuel and it needs hydration as well. So it loves water. You know, give it what it wants, keep it hydrated, keep it happy. Changes in smells. Lots of people find that different smells, particularly synthetic smells, can be provocative. Changes in the barometric pressure in the weather outside. Some people find exercise. Some exercise can be provocative. Running is the one that I often hear about, because you're pounding a lot and your brain maybe doesn't enjoy that bit of jostling around, particularly if you allow yourself to get dehydrated or you allow your blood sugar to drop because you're exercising at a high pace. Sometimes yoga inversions can be the culprit as well. So just to keep an eye on what's happening with your headaches, remembering with bio-individuality, there are certain universal truths, but everybody has a different take on them. Everybody knows that walnuts can be a good source of essential fatty acids. So should everybody eat walnuts? Well, no, because my husband's allergic to walnuts. So if he eats walnuts, he'll probably die. So bio-individuality, you find what works for you, looking at certain universal truths. Sleep is huge for migraine management. Your brain does not like it when you get too little or too much sleep, or it varies widely. So if you're not getting enough sleep during the week and you try to compensate for that at the weekend, that can provoke a migraine. Your brain doesn't like it when you travel to different time zones. Even an hour of difference in when you sleep and when you wake up can make the difference in whether or not it's going to trigger a migraine in your brain. So consistency is really, really vital. Caffeine. We'll talk about caffeine in a few minutes. I'm not ready to talk about caffeine just yet. I do want to talk about medication overuse headaches though. And these are often quite dull, featureless headaches. But it's a good idea when you're tracking your headaches, when you're tracking anything, is just keep an eye on the medications that you're using. Are you using more than 10 painkillers or, ibuprofen, NSAIDs? Are you using more than 10 of those a month? Because that can actually cause a rebound headache. And the only way to find out if you're having a rebound headache is with your medical provider on board with this as well, is to step away from the painkillers for 3 months and see if they calm down. But I know certainly this has been an issue for me before. When I was traveling a lot, I was doing, a transatlantic trip every month, sometimes 2 a month, or going to Australia, or, traveling all over the place, time zones, disrupted sleep, hotels, airports. I was basically getting by on caffeine and ibuprofen and just ricocheting from headache to headache. And when the travel stopped, the painkillers had to, stopped because I didn't need them, because my sleep was restored and my migraines really, really calmed down with that. So going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time every day, whether it's a weekday, the weekend, you're on holidays, doesn't matter. Your brain loves consistency. So those are the medication headaches, medication overuse headaches. So again, they're dull, they're featureless. Keep an eye if you're taking more than 10 painkillers a month. Morning headaches. Again, if you're waking up every morning with a dull headache, it is worth seeing, if you are sharing your bed with somebody, it's worth asking them if you ever wake up breathless during the night or you're snoring a lot more. When we go into perimenopause and estrogen levels drop, we can become a little bit more of a snorer. If you are having these episodes of breathlessness during the night, that needs to get checked out, because that sleep apnea is actually a risk factor for a cardiac event. So if you're waking up with that dull headache every morning, it would be worth, again, asking, if you do have somebody to ask, if you are having these episodes of sleeplessness or if you're snoring more than usual during the night, going to talk to your doctor about maybe getting a sleep study done. So it's about what's your trigger. So measuring and tracking, I'm a big fan of that. I will be putting together a tracker and I'll put that up into the third age course, and I'll put it into the pelvic pain course and the breast cancer course as well. But just pen and paper, just write it down. When you got the headache, how severe it was, what were you doing at the time, what did you do the day before, how did you sleep, how were your stress levels, we'll talk about stress in a sec, and what day of your cycle were you on if you are still menstruating. What are we going to do about all these headaches? That's really the key question, isn't it? So go to bed and get up at the same time, as we've said. Food, eat regularly, restrict your refined carbs, so sugar, processed foods. I am a big fan of a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet, for a couple of different reasons pertinent to headaches, which we'll talk about. There's some evidence to suggest that getting your omega-3 ratio versus your omega-6 ratio can be helpful as well. So your omega-3s are those anti-inflammatory magical compounds, flax, nuts, seeds, algae, great plant-based source for them. If you're eating meat, it's a really rich source of inflammatory omega-6. So even just cutting down the meat and subbing in some plant-based substitutions, lentils, chickpeas, even some of the fake meats. They're still probably a healthier choice than meat. More of that in future videos. There's some evidence that a keto diet may be beneficial as well. It's quite limited in the evidence. Check and see what your triggers are, basically. Restricting your refined carbs is a no-brainer, but check and see what happens to you within 24 hours of eating chocolate or cheese or red wine or citrus. It does take about 24 hours for those triggers to manifest as a headache if they are responsible for your migraines. Hydration, as we've said, is key, preferably with water. So why are women much more affected than men when it comes to migraines? Well, our friend the estrogen fairy, as we've talked about, might be a factor here as well. But we do know that we see spikes in migraines premenstrually and perimenopausally. The good news is they do tend to calm down during and after menopause, so hold on to that. But there are links between migraines and gut health, particularly with migraines and irritable bowel syndrome. So we definitely see an overlap there. And we know the gut and the brain love to talk to each other. The vagus can be that information superhighway between the two of them. But with constipation particularly, even if you don't have IBS, just think back to the last time you were constipated. It can often feel like kind of like heavy, draggy, stagnant pain in your head as well. Now in Chinese medicine, interestingly, the large intestine meridian comes up and over and into the eye. So I don't know if there's anything to that. And there is an acupuncture point or an acupressure point, colon 4 here, that is supposed to be good for headaches as well. I wouldn't use that unless you are menopausal, unless you're really sure that you're not pregnant, because it is one of the forbidden points, just in case you are pregnant. We do know in children, they can get abdominal migraines, which is that kind of gastric upset. And then oftentimes that will translate into more of a head-based migraine as well. So there is a link, but there's definitely a link between migraines and some of the other chronic pain conditions that affect predominantly women. So fibromyalgia, there's quite a strong link between migraines and endometriosis, and migraines and vulvodynia. So hormone balance and really prioritizing an anti-inflammatory lifestyle are key components of managing all of these issues. Getting your estrogen happy and healthy, getting any inflammation that you can control back under control again. So 10-step plan then. Hormone balance. Watch out for any xenoestrogens that you are exposing your body to. So staying away from plastics, don't heat your food in plastics. Avoid handling till receipts, although I think a lot of the till receipts now have changed over, so that's good. But chemicals, read the ingredients on what you're putting on your body in terms of shampoos and lotions, as well as what you're putting in your body, and stay away from known endocrine disruptors like phthalates or parabens, things like that. You really, for good hormone balance, you need good liver function. So in third age, there's a whole module on liver function in there, but your liver likes dark green leafy vegetables. It does not like alcohol. Alcohol is a neurotoxin, and your liver's job is to remove toxins from your body. And if your liver has to choose between eliminating excess hormones or eliminating alcohol, it always is going to put alcohol at the top of the queue because it's more toxic for us. So by reducing or eliminating your alcohol intake, not only are you eliminating the risk of hangovers and sulfite-driven headaches, but you're also giving your liver space and function to get rid of any excess hormones that you have. Because that excess hormone, that excess estrogen, is often the driver for a lot of the symptoms that we see premenstrually and perimenopausally. So a lot of the vasomotor symptoms, as well as a lot of the other musculoskeletal dysfunctions and gastric issues, can be caused by just that imbalance and that fluctuating tendency towards estrogen dominance. So you want your liver happy and healthy so it can process the estrogen so you can eliminate it when you have a bowel movement. Keeping your blood sugar steady, insulin resistance is a precursor for diabetes, first of all, but second of all, insulin and estrogen are locked in this dance as well. So by keeping your insulin, your blood sugar, nice and steady, you're going to make your brain happier, you're going to make your hormones happier, which is going to make you happier. So restricting, eliminating refined carbs, ultra-processed foods, loads of fiber, preferably a whole food, primarily plant-based, if not exclusively plant-based diet, and one that has you well hydrated as well. Interestingly, there seems to be more benefits towards focusing on prebiotics versus probiotics when it comes to migraines. So probiotics are the live cultures, and the prebiotics are what feed these cultures in your gut. So prebiotics, your dark green leafy vegetables, fiber essentially. Getting that wide variety of plants and diversity is really key here. So the guidelines suggest that we should be aiming for 30 different plants a week, but it's a journey. You start where you are and just see if you can add in a couple of different plants each week. But the goal would be to get you to about 30 different plants a week. That seems to be the magic number for happy gut microbiomes. Fiber is your friend here in terms of eliminating excess hormones, in terms of keeping that bacterial community that live in your gut happy and healthy. And I'm just going to say that that's another reason why I think a plant-based whole food diet is probably a better choice for women with a lot of these hormonal issues, because there's no fiber in meat. Anyway, stress management is important, for maybe not for the more obvious reasons that you might think. Absolutely, if we're stressed, we can do a lot of clenching here in our jaw muscles, and that can affect the TMJs that we talked about, and that muscle tension in the neck and the shoulders as well can drive the cervicogenic type headaches that we've talked about. But also it can elevate our blood pressure, which can give us those kind of pounding headaches. When we get stressed, one of our key stress hormones is cortisol. And that's a really great life-preserving response if you're being chased by a tiger through the jungle. But if you're spiking these cortisol releases because you're constantly exposed to stressors throughout your day, and you're reacting to everything as a stressor, even if it's not necessarily a life-threatening stressor, what can happen from a headache perspective is that you'll be okay during the stressful event, but it's afterwards when you're having that cortisol withdrawal, you can often get a letdown headache. So you can be fine during the really stressful work week, but then you wake up on Saturday with a pounding migraine. And that can often be, driven by that cortisol being withdrawn. So what we've got to do is, again, yes, manage estrogen, keep it happy and stable, but get your stress reactions under control. Again, managing your stress response, controlling your controllable stressors in your life. There are some things we can control and there are some things we can't. But having a reservoir toolbox of stress management tools can be really important for getting that reaction under control again. If you are getting a headache that is absolutely pounding and it's a new onset type headache, please do get it checked out, because your blood pressure, particularly for women over 40, is a really key metric when it comes to cardiovascular health and avoiding events in that realm. For women over 40, I am going to talk a little bit more about alcohol, why it's a good idea for women over 40 to really think about significantly decreasing their alcohol and even eliminating it. When we're over 40, our blood-brain barrier gets a lot thinner, so those neurotoxins get in a lot easier. Alcohol is full of empty calories. It increases your appetite, so again, more calories. So if you're trying to manage the metabolic changes that happen with menopause as well, removing alcohol can be an easy fix. Lots of alcoholic beverages, particularly darker spirits or red wines containing sulfites, are known migraine triggers for some women as well. But I think what puts it to the top of the queue in controllables when it comes to migraine management is the fact that it is also going to be prioritized by your liver. So if your liver has to choose between processing alcohol or processing excess hormones, it's going to do the alcohol first, which means you can be left with those excess hormones. The problem isn't even primarily the hormone itself, but it can often just be the fluctuating levels of hormones. So if we know that we're in a time of hormonal change in those couple of days before you start bleeding, if you are still menstruating, estrogen is going to drop quite low. But during perimenopause, a lot of the symptoms of perimenopause are due to that fluctuating output of the ovaries in terms of your estrogen production. So anything you can do to steady the ship and aid the elimination of excess hormones is a good thing for you generally, but when it comes to migraines particularly. There's some evidence that magnesium, B6 and CoQ10 may be helpful when taken in combination, and the B6 probably is part of a B complex. Probably a good idea for most of us to take a good multivitamin as an insurance policy anyway, but those three seem to be the best. Interestingly, magnesium is also going to be beneficial from a hormone balancing point of view, but also a sleep and a bowel function point of view, both of which we know are really important for migraine prevention. Strength training. Strength training is really important because not only do we have evidence that shows, as we talk about in third age, that strengthening the deep neck flexors, but also the lateral neck flexors is going to help reduce cervicogenic headaches, so headaches that are coming from problems in your neck, in your spine. But also, if you're doing strength training, it can improve your blood sugar consistency levels as well. You're less likely to have a lot of those fluctuations. When you are sleeping, this is when your glymphatic system is working. And the glymphatic system is kind of like a parallel system to your lymphatic system. It's like a waste disposal system for your brain, and it clears out all the plaque and all the rubbish and detritus that we accumulate during the day. And there are links between disrupted sleep and dementia and Parkinson's, and we know already that postmenopausally, twice as many women as men develop dementia. We know that women who have a hysterectomy with their ovaries removed are at a higher risk for developing Parkinson's disease. So sleep is really vital for removing some of those plaque buildup in the vessels in your brain that have been linked to those issues. But we know that too much or too little sleep, as we've said, can be a provocateur for migraines. Even just a 1 hour change in your sleep routine at either end can be a trigger for a migraine. There has been some evidence showing that having a warm shower about an hour before you go to bed can be a good way, because if you're having a warm shower, it actually cools your core temperature down and you might be able to sleep better. But practicing good sleep hygiene is a really key metric when it comes to managing migraines. So travel is a major disruption, not only because travel is going to disrupt your sleep, but travel will disrupt your bowel function as well. And again, bowels and brains love to talk to each other. So watching for that when you travel, that you are taking steps to try and get your sleep back under control, that you're not depending then on caffeine to get you going and maybe a glass of wine or gin and tonic to get you to sleep at night. Because if you're having a drink to get yourself to sleep at night, you're not getting good quality sleep. And the alcohol is also going to act not only as an irritant going through the blood-brain barrier, but also you're going to be quite dehydrated. And none of those things your brain enjoys and might reward you with a migraine for it, just to send you a message. You want to detox your diet. So again, alcohol, refined carbs, processed foods, but you might need to detox your emotions as well. Journaling can be a great way to do this. I'm a big fan of morning pages. You just get a copy. Don't get a fancy notebook, because you won't want to write anything profound in it. You want to keep it for nice thoughts. Just get your common or garden copybook for school and just write it down. Just go for maybe 10 minutes, just writing down whatever comes into your head. Don't reread it. You can tear out the pages and throw it away. But it's about getting all the junk out of your head onto the paper, and it seems to work much better writing it rather than typing it. So again, stepping away maybe from the phones and the gadgets as well. And again, super guilty here, but trying. So detox your diet, detox your emotions. Exercise. So exercise, again, can be really, really useful in the right way. Strength training, as we've said, can be a good way of managing your blood sugar. Yoga can be a great way of, again, working on postural awareness, making sure the deep neck flexors are doing their job properly, that you're bringing that mental attention to your body as you move through the yoga postures. But for some women, inversions can be provocative, maybe at different times of the month, premenstrually. Just keep an eye on, again, if you're doing your tracking and you're measuring, you'll know when maybe you're going to be a bit more vulnerable, and that might be a time for you to stay away from yoga inversions. But generally, restorative yoga is just one of the most beautiful things you can do for yourself. Generally, I think for a good nervous system reset. And I think it can be a really useful tool to have, just to lie down in a supported way and allow your nervous system to reset. I'm going to give a quick little plug here for Woman on Fire, because my yoga teacher, Laura Feeney, is going to come and do an online session on exactly that, restorative yoga to reset your nervous system. Running can be provocative because you're pounding again, so sometimes that can be jarring or irritating. But for some women, if they don't run, they will get a migraine, because running is their stress relief. And again, exercise, cardio exercise, really great way to stimulate your digestive system, stimulate the liver to help get rid of some of those toxins. So bio-individuality, it's about trying different things and seeing what works for you. Cycling might be a better choice, but be careful about your neck posture. If you're on a mountain bike or a racer where you're sticking your chin out to look, so maybe an exercise bike where you're a bit more upright might be a good choice. It's about being a student of your own body, about listening to the messages. It's all information. Listen to the messages and find out what works for you. So again, tracking and measuring, really, really important. If you are doing a lot of HIIT, endurance, high energy exercise, it might be a good idea to balance it out with some yoga, with some Pilates, with some mindfulness. So again, you're getting, because your brain doesn't necessarily know the difference between you going for a run and you, from an evolutionary perspective, running away from a tiger. So again, making sure that you've got some nervous system resets going on. All right, we're on the home stretch. In summary, migraine brains are sensitive to change. Hormonal changes, food changes, sleep changes, stress changes. So when you're introducing any of the changes that we've talked about, go slowly with them. Apart from eliminating alcohol, you can do that straight away. You do not need to wean yourself off your Cabernet Sauvignon. You want to make a 3-month migraine management plan, because like our bowels, sometimes it takes a while to change direction with the steam liner. Your brain doesn't really like change. So you just have to kind of slowly start changing the diet, changing the exercise, changing the stress management, finding out what works for you, because you are an individual. But we're really looking for consistency, stability, reliability. So that means that you're working on keeping your blood sugar nice and steady. Your brain does not like this with blood sugar. So we're looking for slow release. We're looking for healthy fats, good sources of protein, removing refined carbohydrates and processed foods. So your whole grains, your beans, your legumes, all great. And we're aiming for about 30 different plants a week. We're aiming for it. So start where you are, okay? We are looking for hydration. Be careful with changes, particularly with caffeine. So I'm a fan of caffeine. Caffeine can be a friend or a foe in this situation. So again, an example of bio-individuality. So my husband brings me a cup of coffee in the morning, because it just takes me a while to get going in the morning. And when we both have our coffees, for me, having the coffee brings me up to baseline. For him, having a coffee makes him super chatty first thing in the morning. Now, if I do not have my coffee within a certain time frame, I will pay for it with a resounding migraine that can really just knock me out for a day or two, which probably means I do need to wean myself off caffeine, but I like it. I like the effect it has on me. It's a good source of antioxidants and it's great for bowel function. And as long as I get it on time, no one is going to get hurt. It's an ongoing conversation, we shall say. So assess your relationship with caffeine, assess your relationship with alcohol, see how you get on. Sleep, I think we've talked a lot about sleep. Consistency, go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, avoid devices in the 2 hours before you go to bed, avoid alcohol at night, a nice cool room. And if you are waking up with those foggy, dull, draggy morning headaches, you might want to just check, is there some sleep apnea going on, or could it be a medication overuse rebound headache? Bowels, don't get constipated physically or emotionally, important. And we're aiming for an anti-inflammatory life. So hopefully you have some strategies that you can start to do, even if it's just drinking an extra couple of glasses of water, of starting to eliminate added sugar from your life, of switching to a wider variety, adding in a few extra or different plants every week, assessing your relationship with caffeine or with alcohol, looking at your exercise, but measuring and tracking, because there's a lot that we can do without depending on medications, which all have side effects, or masking symptoms. Look at what you're doing. Your body is wonderfully designed. Sometimes the choices that we make are not always the most supportive. So really to have a look and bring that element of mindfulness and awareness and measurement to your migraine situation. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.